What's up, guys and girls? This is James at Locking the Value and copymycrypto.com talking to you today about the wonderful world of crypto. Before I get into the video, so literally what I want to do is look at the crypto market and the wider perspective in terms of the financial market and the current situation that the bull cycle is in and my take on it. And realistically as well, talking about technical analysis. And technical analysis is brilliant. However, without bearing in mind the wider the bigger picture, there it has limited value in terms of a long-term perspective. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Before I get into that, as always, the spreadsheet is updated. These are the first 26 coins I spoke about on the channel that I thought would crush it in the bull market. Only Grin is down. Look at that, ruining my spreadsheet. But Phantom is in yellow because I thought it would crush it in the bull market. It's currently a 60x on when I did the video on Udemy. At its peak was at 84 cents, which is 168x, which wasn't bad. I'm only in a few of these now. The rest are compounded into projects that I think will do, and cryptos that will do better runs in this cycle than these. And that's exactly what I share on Copy My Crypto. If you're new to crypto, get onto copymycrypto.com and check it out. It will benefit you massively. Right. So, look, the market is continuing the pullback. I'm really glad we didn't see the sort of crushing trajectory I perceived yesterday. I know I watched it drop down. Bitcoin itself dropped down to around 35,000, which, you know, from 41 was deep. It was a deep dive, but it's recovered slightly. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now we have to look at what's happening right now in the market. Again, I'm not going to go into manipulation. I think that's very obvious, and I think anyone in crypto has pretty much identified that at this point. Now the Wyckoff theory is what I keep seeing on everywhere at the moment. Now, in terms of the phases, the whole Wyckoff theory works off of the basis of supply and demand, and that's important. It's particularly with what I'm about to talk about. And I believe we're at an accumulation event where we're going to have a fairly significant capitulation of prices, which I think we've seen, and I still think there's bleed to go. Don't get me wrong. And I think there's going to be sideways movement for a while before another run. And that's going to depend on how things play out within the financial markets as well. What we know, unequivocally this year, what we know is that major institutions across the board are getting into crypto, particularly Bitcoin, particularly Ethereum. Those two assets are being bought up at an alarming rate by institutions. There's no doubt about it. We know they sold off, but we've seen articles of stuff like someone or some institution selling 3,000 Bitcoin at 58 grand, buying back another 3,500 Bitcoin at much lower prices. So they're not left the market. They've sold at a good price and then they've bought back in. Right? Institutions, whales, they see the long-term perspective. And what has to be discussed is the stock market and gold. Both of those things are relevant to what's happening with Bitcoin. Now, fundamentally, what we are expecting to see, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but what we are expecting to see is a stock market crash. This was literally an article in Forbes from yesterday, talking about the volatility of the S&P 500 over the past couple of weeks and month or so. And the question is there going to be a stock market crash? And yes, I think a lot of us expect it. Currently, um, analysts are less optimistic about EPS growth in 2022 because of Biden's proposed increase in capital gains tax. Outlook for 2021, analysts have raised their EPS forecast from $181 to $193 and $197 to $202. So they don't believe necessarily there's going to be a crash. However, what we are well aware of is that we have seen companies massively, massively overvalued. And you could still apply that same logic to crypto. But in a time where there's been global mass money printing, and many of these businesses that are in the top, in the S&P 500, haven't necessarily had earnings in the same way that they would have a year ago, 2 years ago, really, because this feels like it's been going on forever with COVID stuff. And the prices haven't dramatically changed. They just haven't dramatically changed. And if I'm a company and all of a sudden I can't sell or manufacture my products, and my earnings for my company dwindle by 20% across a year, but the valuation of my company on stocks and shares stays the same, something is wrong. And we've seen it, and we see it. And what we have to bear in mind is this is happening. Now, whether or not this crash happens this year or next year, it's going to happen. And it is an inevitability. There's been minor retracements, and even Forbes, for Forbes, who hate on crypto, they've produced an article here where they've effectively said, no, stock market isn't going to crash. Now, I think most of us are not convinced that that's necessarily true. Now, stock markets there's always going to be a crash at some point. Always. It might not happen this year, but it might happen next year. But I don't see a scenario where there's not a correction of enormous magnitude. Maybe not a crash, but an enormous correction has to be an inevitability for stock market, right? And then we have to look at what happens during stock market crashes. Now, gold, as an example, doesn't necessarily rise every time. That's in 1980, dropped. That's in 1990, sort of sideways, right? 97 to 98, sideways. 2000 to 2001, sideways. 2008 to 2012, huge parabolic growth. We also saw the same thing with silver. So down track, sideways, huge parabolic growth. And pretty much the same for gold mining stocks as well. Now, bear in mind, we've got Bitcoin, the supply of Bitcoin and the stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin is going to be catching up. Well, we know how close it is to gold already, right? It's not, and as Bitcoin supplies dwindle, and people want to talk about a China ban. China ban isn't good, but it's not actually new news. And if they were to ban, let's just say, China banned all Bitcoin mining, that would dwindle the supply. That would increase the value of Bitcoin. That's not a bad thing. That would be beautiful. That'd be a beautiful thing. And it would raise the price of Bitcoin. And if it rose the price of Bitcoin, we all know that altcoins would rise. And what I want to throw out, and I'll throw it out there as a muser's thought, right? The stock market's going to crash. If it happens this year, or it happens next year, or it happens in 2003, right? I personally feel that with it should be happening within the next 12 months, because it's been staggering how overvalued a lot of these companies are, considering many of them couldn't produce shit for the last year. Where's the store of value? Where do those investors go when it's crashing and they want to pull out of their position in a coin, like a company, and they want to put their money into a store of value? Yes, gold. Yes, silver, because silver will become more of one. That's an inevitability. It's highly undervalued. And Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin. And when the stock market crashes, Bitcoin could be the moment that Bitcoin and the stock market, because they have been intrinsically linked. There's no argument there. They are intrinsically linked at the moment, but they are going to decouple to some degree. And when the stock market crashes, if Bitcoin could see a huge influx of volume just on that basis. And personally, I'm looking at a number when I'm looking at the market at the moment, and when I'm looking, because all of this is short term, and whether it's unpleasant or however you feel about it, it's irrelevant because it's a short term perspective. But if you look at Bitcoin, and I'm looking at massive institutions buying millions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin, why? Why are they doing it? It's because they're anticipating something. Now, either they're anticipating that Bitcoin just as in and of itself is going to be worth $1 million a coin or $500,000 a coin, right? Could be that. It could be that they need a hedge against the investment portfolio that they have because a crash is imminent or a crash is on its way. That's a serious conversation. It's something people need to consider, because we know that a number of companies buy up gold, but why have they started buying Bitcoin? Yeah, companies, institutions don't go along with a fad. They go along with something that they see as valuable or as a good hedge against something that's coming. So for me, while I'm looking at the market, it's nice to see just a green percentage on Bitcoin at the moment. I'm not gonna lie, but while I'm looking at the market and I'm looking at seeing news stories about individuals or institutions buying up tons of Bitcoin, I look at it and go, to me, this is a hedge against a crash that is coming. It has to come because the stock market in and of itself is overpriced. And again, like I said, you can have that conversation about crypto, but institutions are buying in, and they're buying in for a reason. So yeah, that's it really. I've just been musing on this for the last 12 hours or so. So I thought I'd just speak. But like I said, technical analysis is a wonderful thing and it's really valuable in terms of seeing the short term and stuff. But if you don't look at the wider picture, combining with technical analysis, you're missing a trick. I do think that the TA shows right now the market's on a down, like the market's looks like it's turning downwards, right? But without the wider context, the TA just shows the market's dying. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's any evidence to show that. In fact, I think most of the evidence, whether it's anecdotal or not, is evidence to the contrary. So that's it. That's it. Those are my thoughts. So I just wanted to share them. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. If you're new to cryptocurrency, get onto Copy My Crypto and check out how you can make some money. Perfect opportunity, especially with the market on lows. This is a buying opportunity for many, many people. So if you're new to crypto, check it out. Copy My Crypto. Link is in the description. Anyway, that's it.